Well, as we continue then with our focus for the day on gender-based violence, we're now joined via Zoom by Vanita Daniels. She's the director at RiseUp Against Gender-Based Violence. A very good afternoon to you, Vanita. Thanks for agreeing once again to speak to us and join us here on SABC News.
Hi, good afternoon, and thanks for having me on.
Vanita, I'd like to talk about, the contributing factors to gender-based violence. We just played a story now, just before coming to live, of a woman who's not being allowed to ascend to the throne with the belief that she thinks it's because she is female. And this is some of the issues that women are grappling with, isn't it? The fact that women are still sort of seen as inferior. And how much does this and other issues related to that really contribute to the issue of GBV?
I think for us, particularly as an organization, talking about the drivers of gender-based violence and looking at preventing gender-based violence, patriarchy, toxic masculinity, and the continued sort of devaluing of women and women's work in society leads very much to a great extent to the rising numbers of gender-based violence, because men feel a sense of entitlement to women. They feel a sense of entitlement to our bodies. They feel a sense of entitlement to our time. And it's because we are seen as less than or not as valuable as men in the society.
Yeah. And I mean, how do we even begin to address the issue of patriarchy when it starts from birth, really, given that, when a boy child is born, in some communities, in some families, it's more celebrated than when a girl child is born, almost as if there's more value in a boy child.
Yeah, if we're really serious about trying to deal with patriarchy and trying to deal with the issues around gender-based violence, I think as a society we need to start moving towards a genderless society. We need to start looking at what are the messages that we are sending young children. For instance, we have roles that are specifically identified for boy children. There are roles that are specifically identified for girl children. We have discussions around good girls don't do that. We have discussions around boys don't cry. You need to be strong. You need to be a man. And so once we start inculcating those kind of messages into young, impressionable kids, it's not a surprise that we have, the levels of toxic masculinity. It's not a surprise that we have issues where men feel that women are not as valuable as them in society. And that's just in our homes and, social formations. But we have structural patriarchy. We have, incidences where women are not paid the same as men. Yeah. We have incidences where the work of women is not valued as much as the work of men. And so there's a lot of factors at play if we really want to look at how are we going to get rid of patriarchy, toxic masculinity, and eventually start to make a dent in, the scourge of GBV in this country.
Yeah. I mean, is it safe to say right now, you talk about making a dent, when it comes to fighting gender-based violence, is it safe for us to say at this moment that we are failing in those attempts then to fight the scourge, to fight gender-based violence? And I think you and I had the discussion before, given that, we keep hearing of these incidents, women that are victims of gender-based violence, and unfortunately and sadly in many instances where, we're talking about fatalities. And I wonder, when we look at that and all these, campaigns we've got going, these organizations like yourselves that we've got, is it safe to say that we're failing, and what more can be done? And maybe this is where, government needs to maybe step in, and are they not stepping in adequately is maybe another question that's linked to that.
I think for us, particularly as an organization, there needs to be more focus on prevention, and that's where we are. Obviously, there's a lot of direct support that is provided to victims and survivors of gender-based violence. But if we're going to do anything about GBV in this country, we need to look at preventing gender-based violence from happening in the first place. And so as an organization, we started conducting behavioral change programs where we focus specifically on talking to men, because men by and large are the majority of perpetrators and abusers when it comes to gender-based violence. And so we've been conducting what we call tavern dialogues as part of our behavioral change programs. And we speak to men around patriarchy, around issues of toxic masculinity. And some of the conversations that we've been having at those dialogues have been quite illuminating, actually. Even for us as a team, we were quite surprised at the kind of engagement of the men in those tavern dialogues. And men really want to talk. And so I'm really of the opinion that we should stop having conversations with the converted, and we should start where the problem is.
Yeah, and you know, interestingly, as you talk about, I was actually going to talk about what you have been up to in terms of the fact that your organization, Rise Up Against GBV, has had this study on the impact of taverns on gender-based violence. When you do have these conversations, I'm so interested to know what exactly are men saying. I mean, what is the response? I mean, I can imagine what, you know, the men who do indeed understand the plight of women, but I'm interested to know if you're finding, you know, some pushback. And men who perhaps don't even want to talk to you or speak to you about these issues. I mean, maybe you can give us just a general picture of what you're actually finding as you sort of have these conversations.
Well, what we found for the most part was men were very excited about the dialogues. One of the complaints that came from men was that we don't have enough of these. We don't have enough of these spaces where we get to talk and where we get to, you know, air some of our grievances. There were a lot of grievances, I must admit. But one of the good things around the dialogues for us was that men were very open to talking. And surprisingly enough, the men in the dialogues would actually be pushing back against each other, because the fault of the dialogues was we just facilitated conversation. We were, you know, they were talking amongst themselves. And so what was one of the most surprising things for us was when men would say, you know, things that would kind of perpetuate rape culture, or they would admit to buying women drinks so that they can, you know, have sex with them. And other men in the taverns would be, but you can't buy sex with alcohol. What are you doing? And so it was very surprising for the men in those spaces to actually listen to their friends say some of the most horrendous things. And that highlighted to us that even though men are talking, because there are other organizations that work with men, even though men are talking, especially when men are talking with themselves, we discovered that they were not having the right conversations. So the conversations that men were having with themselves was really centered around don't rape, don't, you know, protect our women, protect our children. And so when we started picking away at those statements and showing the men that, you know, when you say something like our woman, it means possession, it means ownership. And already we are failing the battle if you start by saying, I own this woman and I'm going to protect her.
Yeah. All right, Vanita, it's always a pleasure having you on the show and hearing some of your input and hearing about the work that you're doing. We really do appreciate it. Thanks very much to you, Vanita.
Thank you so much.